You're listening to Packers Talk Network.
PackersTalk.com.
You're listening to No Huddle Radio on the Packers Talk Radio Network, your home for in-depth and thoughtful Packers analysis. I'm your host, Gil Martin. My co-host is my good friend, Sean Tehan. In addition to this show, I write for the PackersPost.com and Cheesehead TV. And Sean was a TV sportscaster in Minnesota. We're here to talk Packers because you're all here for one thing, and that's a love for Green Bay football. Sean, a tough loss in Green Bay last week, but now a chance to get back on track in Los Angeles. We've got a lot to discuss today, but first, a word from our sponsor.
Yeah, Packers going out west, but then they'll be back in a couple of weeks back at Lambeau Field. And a few words about our sponsor, Wisconsin's own Ticket King. If you're looking for tickets for over 30 years, Ticket King has been providing Packers tickets to Packer fans. You can find them on the web at theticketking.com or visit their locations in Green Bay and Milwaukee. For direct links to specific Packer game tickets, go to packerstalk.com/tickets or browse their website at theticketking.com. And if you're watching with us on YouTube, on Facebook today, we thank you for tuning in. Hit that subscribe button while you're at it. And you can see the link right there to theticketking.com and packerstalk.com/tickets for Packer tickets everywhere. And get to see this Packer team because, hey, even though Sunday was ugly, they still had a chance, Gil, even though the Vikings, they got that inaugural divisional battle of 2024. It was kind of scary at the end for the Vikings. The Packers just kind of woke up a little too late, though.
Yeah, and they made one or two too many mistakes in the second half after making a lot of them in the first half, and I guess desperation had something to do with it. But look, if I were to tell you the Packers would be down 28-0 and lost by 2 points and had a chance to win at the end, I don't want to be down 28-0, but given that you were, I would take the way they almost came back. By the way, the NFL's got to do something about the onside kick rules. They're ridiculous at this point.
Yeah, I don't think there's a good solution to it in general. I don't think there's a right answer to that whole situation. But hey, the Packers made a 6-point game with more than 10 minutes left to go in the fourth quarter after trailing 28-0 and essentially just getting their butts whooped the entire day. And they just finally kicked into gear. And that was outside. There were 3 interceptions. There was a fumble. There was a turnover on downs. Couple missed field goals as well. A lot of drops by Dontavian Wicks. A lot of drops and just a really sloppy play in general. The third down defense wasn't very good. Minnesota was exposing Green Bay quite a bit. The pass rush was non-existent. Yet, with all that being said, and the Vikings, who are playing very good football, 4-0 football team right now, and they're probably playing at their peak level, and the Vikings still only had a 2-point win. That's saying a lot, Gil. I know it's a loss and there's no moral victories, but it's something where, hey, as a Packer fan, I wasn't as upset about losing a divisional game as I could have been because of the fight that they showed and the ability to come back and legit having a shot to win, even though they trailed by 28 points in the first half.
Yeah, and that would have been the biggest comeback in Packers history, which is now 23 points, happened twice against the Rams in 82 and against the Cowboys in, 2014 or 16?
That was in 2012 because I remember I was 2012 because that's when Matt Flynn came in and I was watching in college at a bar nearby and we watched the whole comeback. Me and my buddies, we couldn't believe what we saw. But go on, Gil.
Yeah, no, and I think the other thing is this, especially in the first half, you saw Jordan Love. There was clearly rust there. He was clearly getting a feel for what he was actually able to do with that knee and whether he could fully step into his passes. They were fluttering. Some were high, some were short. And eventually he sort of figured out what he could do, how he could do it. And in the second half, he played a lot better. Although some of those interceptions, it was just, I think, more out of desperation. Yeah. And one thing I'm noticing about Jordan Love, we noticed it last year in the playoff game against San Francisco, when he tries to do a little too much, he can force the ball in, and you see those interceptions coming. It happened against San Francisco in the second half. It happened against Minnesota in the second half on this past Sunday. He's got to understand that he is able to get 2 or 3 plays to get 30 yards need to get it all in one play.
Yeah, it was a lot of hero ball. And if you saw on social media, Love was he entered the building with a Brett Favre old starter jersey, an old school Brett Favre jersey, less than a week after Favre announced that he was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. He threw 4 touchdowns and 3 interceptions, and the first quarterback to do that since Brett Favre in 1999. So it was a lot of Brett Favre, shades of Brett Favre from Jordan Love on Sunday, which I don't think the Packers want to see as often. They want to see more of, hey, like more precision, like Aaron Rodgers. Just take what the defense gives you. You have the horses to be able to take advantage of any situation all around on this offense. So that's just something too. And I got to say before we move on, Gil, is Dontavian Wicks, man, is this guy baby Davante Adams or what? Where we've talked about how his ability to get off the line of scrimmage, his ability to separate, his route running is very good, but he's got a lot of issues with his hands right now, and the drops are a serious issue, which Davante Adams had serious issues in his second year in the NFL as well. I'm not saying Dontavian Wicks is going to be Davante Adams, but my goodness, the flashes are there, and it's just eerily similar. The amount of drops he's had and the struggles he's had catching the football like Davante did in his second year in the NFL.
Yeah, and I'd love to see him become even half of what Davante Adams became.
Oh, God, yeah.
Ultimately. And look, Wicks has got to straighten some things out. He is so talented. You saw that. And yet, he also needs to be more consistent, and I think that will come with a little bit more experience. 2 things also real quick that bothered me about that Vikings game. The lack of pass rush, especially in the first half. And then what's going on with Braden Narvison? What is going on with the kicking game?
Yeah, it's rough. He had the miss, I believe, from 49 yards, which is kind of understandable. But today's NFL, you're an NFL kicker. You got to be able to make those. But the 37-yard miss was inexcusable. He's not been good. He has struggled a lot. And he has missed a field goal attempt in every single game this year. I know the Tennessee game, he officially was perfect, but he had a missed field goal that was wiped away by a penalty by the Titans. And it's just been a huge struggle. And the whole thing is, I keep thinking where Brian Gutekunst said after they let go of Anders Carlson and then let go of Greg Joseph and then picked up Narvison on waivers after roster cuts was a matter of he has no patience. He has very little patience when it comes to specialists. What did the Packers do at kicker, Gil? They brought in a couple guys for tryouts this past week with Chad Ryland, the former New England Patriots kicker, Lucas Havlicek, the former LA Rams kicker. What do? Do you keep going Braden Narvison, or do you look for another option? Because it's not good right now. It's not good. It's plain and simple. It will not cut it.
No, and he's missing wide right on every kick. It's
from the left hash, which is the bane of my existence right now. It's driving me nuts.
Yeah, it is. It is left hash, wide right, over and over again. I think it's more psychological than mechanical at this point. I think that Brian Gutekunst is going to show a little more patience, but not a lot. I think the leash is getting shorter and shorter. And if he misses something from inside of 50 yards this week, that may be the end of the line for Braden Narvison. And I like his attitude. I like the way he goes about things. But at the end of the day, he's got to get the job done. And right now, he's not getting the job done.
No, it's been so poor. But you got to look also, is there an issue with the long snapping? Is there an issue with the holding by Daniel Whelan? I wasn't a kicker. I don't know this. I don't know the details with that. But I feel like with the constant wide right misses, it could be mental mistakes by Narvison, but is there just something wrong with the whole operation in general when they're setting up from the left hash? Because it's always from the left hash that it's the problem. And for those listening and watching on YouTube, Facebook, watching us live right now, feel free to chime in. What should the Packers do at kicker? Because I don't think Gil and I have good solutions. I don't know if the Packers have good solutions. Maybe someone out there has a good idea of what's going on and what can help improve this situation, because it's literally been the difference between winning and losing so far this season, where they lost the opener in Brazil by 5 points, and Narvison had a miss there, and there were some other issues there too. But you lose a game by 2 points and your kicker misses 2 field goals. Boom, it's a huge swing. It's a huge swing, and it's just something that the Packers got to resolve sooner rather than later.
And how many kickers have the Packers had in camp or on the practice squad so far this year? 5, 6?
A lot. And Greg Joseph was just he's been really good for the Giants. He went 5 for 5 in the Thursday night game this past week against Dallas. Where is it a matter? Is there something wrong besides the kicker? I don't know what's going on, and you just want someone. You took for granted the consistency that Mason Crosby had over the years, and man, it's like the Packers can replace a quarterback, a Hall of Fame quarterback. They can replace a potentially Hall of Fame left tackle. You can replace all these studs.
And you can't
on offense and defense, but you can't replace a kicker. I don't get it. I don't understand. But speaking of the offense and the defense, though, there were some injuries that were suffered in that loss against Minnesota. Christian Watson got rolled up on, had an ankle injury, was carted off the field. Fortunately, it doesn't sound like he's going to go on the injured reserve. Devontae Wyatt, probably the Packers' best defensive lineman this season in terms of production. He also left the game with an ankle injury. Reportedly was spotted leaving the locker room after Sunday's loss against Minnesota with crutches and a walking boot on. Some key injuries there, Gil. But hey, the good thing is Christian Watson, it sounds like he's going to miss the IR, which is significant because the way that he got rolled up on, oh man, that looked like a season ender for sure.
Yeah, it looked brutal. And thankfully, they're saying it's a mild high ankle sprain, which is still not good because high ankle sprains can take a long time to heal.
Yes, they can.
But look, let's talk about a guy who's had no luck staying on the field. I can't blame him for that. That was a hospital ball that Jordan Love threw. And when I saw his leg be trapped under him and the way he fell, I thought it was possibly season ending. So the diagnosis is better than expected. And as for Devontae Wyatt, I mean, here's a guy who has really taken his game to another level this year. The only solace that I take in these two injuries those are two of the deeper positions on this roster. So if they're going to miss a game, 2 games, 3 games, at least there is some depth there to cover for these players until they're ready to come back.
I know Christian Watson has had a lot of injury issues in his short career with the Packers, but anyone saying that he's weak and made of glass or, that's BS. That's BS. That was something where it looked like kind of a similar injury that Eric Stokes had a few years ago in Detroit, where that could have been knee, ankle, leg. That could have been so many things. It looked so. It could have been a combination of a bunch of things, just the whole lower body in general. Where Christian Watson is fortunate just to get out of it with an ankle injury, with a mild ankle sprain, which is like, whoo, baby. And you hope that he can heal up and everything. It doesn't sound like he's going to go on Sunday against the Rams, which is probably best case scenario given the depth of the position at receiver. But Devontae Wyatt, obviously, we haven't heard more about that, but Christian Watson reportedly sounds pretty good. Some additional injuries to keep watch of. We didn't get the Jair Alexander-Justin Jefferson matchup because he didn't practice on Friday with a groin and a quad injury. He missed Sunday's game. Jordan Morgan was dealing with that shoulder. He's missed the last 2 games with that shoulder injury, which bothered him during training camp. Carrington Valentine missed his second straight game as well. So some additional injuries right there to keep watch of, which is a little bit of a concern, especially with Jair Alexander.
Yeah, and you're down 2 of your top 3 boundary corners against the Vikings with Alexander and Valentine both out of the lineup. Minnesota, with the talented receiving core they had, that was the wrong week to have that happen. This week, it's looking a little different, and we'll talk about that pretty soon. Well, let's look at some matchups real quick. The Packers obviously playing the LA Rams out in La La Land this weekend. Let's start with the Green Bay offense and the Rams defense. The Green Bay offense has been pretty good statistically. 3rd overall in total offense, which is crazy given how many opportunities and how many points they've left out there on the field with penalties or turnovers. Just it's crazy that the 3rd overall total offense. The Rams total defense, not been very good. 31st overall, 2nd worst in the NFL. Green Bay's offense is averaging 26 points a game. That's top 10, as well as 235.5 passing yards per game and 174.5 rushing yards per game. That's all top 7 in the NFL right now. The Rams defense, they're allowing just under 29 points a game, 31st in the league. 219.8 passing yards a game. That's 21st in the NFL, and 165.5 rushing yards per game. That is worst in the NFL. And the only team worse in total defense this year, Gil, are the Indianapolis Colts. And we saw what the Packers were able to do against that Colts defense with Malik Willis and not Jordan Love running the show.
Given all that being said, what's the matchup that we should watch between a Packers offense that statistically has been very good this year against a Rams defense that has really struggled and really missing future Hall of Famer Aaron Donald?
Yeah, I mean, first thing that comes to my mind is you got to establish the run, and that to me means you got to win in the trenches. Josh Jacobs, Emmanuel Wilson, you give them, a slight hole, room to run, they're going to do damage. And if the Packers offensive line opens holes for Jacobs and Wilson, that could make this a really, really solid get-well game for this Green Bay offense. But they also have to stop beating themselves with those penalties.
Oh, 100%. And Josh Jacobs, they couldn't really get him going because they were trailing. They were pretty much in passing mode, 2-minute mode. They had the time, the clock was not in their favor in Sunday's loss in Green Bay. I expect Josh Jacobs to get a lot more carries this weekend in LA. And he's a guy who still has run for 329 rushing yards this year. That's 7th in the NFL. He's averaging 4.6 yards per carry. He's doing what the Packers signed him to do. And Emmanuel Wilson has been a steady number 2 back as well. And these guys should have big games where this Rams defense, no Aaron Donald makes a world of difference because, man, they are just missing him so badly, and the numbers back it up too. They do have some talent where first-round pick Jared Verse, he's shown some flashes. He's getting to the quarterback a lot. He's not finishing plays. It's kind of similar to Devontae Wyatt in a way where he's getting pressure on the QB. He's just not finishing. He's had a lot of missed tackles. He's getting in the backfield a lot, though. 5 tackles for loss this year. That's tied for first in the NFL amongst defensive players. So that's something where the Packers can really dictate the game in the rushing offense. It could be a really, really good day for the rushing offense. What I'm looking at, though, Gil, as well, you talk about the trenches. How about the Packers pass protection against the Rams pass rush, where, again, you're not dealing with Aaron Donald on the Rams, but Jared Verse is the guy to keep an eye on. Braden Fiske, their second-round pick, also from Florida State, is a guy worth keeping an eye on. The Rams have 7 total sacks this year. It has not been very good. Tied for 5th fewest in the league. Green Bay's offensive line, they've allowed 6 sacks this year. That's tied for 5th fewest in the NFL. And essentially, if you give Jordan Love time, if he could step into throws and he has time to really attack this Rams passing defense, it could be a good day where the Rams, their opposing passer rating this year in defense, 122.7. That's second worst in the NFL, and they're allowing opposing quarterbacks to complete 72.5% of their passes. That's tied for 4th worst in the NFL. This should be a really, really good day for the Packers offense.
It should be. And if you combine those two factors, if you have the running game going and you're coming up on 2nd and 4, 3rd and 2, that gives you options. You can keep running the ball. You can keep the defense off balance. Just picking up, 4 or 5 yards on first down reduces the effectiveness of the pass rush because they have to stay honest and respect the possibility that you'll run the ball again. I think this should be a get-well game for the Packers offense, but protecting Love, who is still not as mobile as he normally is, and is probably not going to be as mobile for the rest of the season, you got to make sure that, he has time to do what he needs to do.
Yeah, and Jordan Love did look like he had some rust to shake off in that first game back from that knee sprain. And you hope that the rust kind of shakes off a little bit. But, man, how good has Jaden Reed, though, been this year where you see what the Rams do, what Sean McVay does with Cooper Kupp, where he moves them all over the field. He uses them in so many different ways when he's healthy. The Packers got to do that with Jaden Reed. The whole question, especially dating back to last year's, who's the wide receiver 1 in Green Bay? It's Jaden Reed. Jaden Reed is the best receiver in the Green Bay Packers receiver room. He led Green Bay with 7 catches for 139 yards in that loss on Sunday. His second 100-yard receiving games of the year. He has 336 receiving yards this season. That's 6th in the NFL. He's also averaging just under 20 yards per catch. And that's 5th in the NFL. He's just an explosive player. You can do so much with him. You can bring him around in end arounds and jet sweeps. There's just so much you can do with him. And I feel like the Packers also, and Gil, I figured you mentioned this too, where the Rams secondary, the Rams in general, are pretty beat up. Their secondary is really beat down as well. Veteran corner Tre'Davious White has had a rough year. He's been penalized a lot. He's been targeted a lot. They got to target that guy early and often on Sunday, where just try to get favorable situations and target him over and over again, because it's gonna lead to good things for the Packers.
Yeah, and right now with the 5 penalties, he's got to be a little tentative. He cannot be confident the way he's been burned and the way he's been penalized. You get on him early and get some big plays against him, you get inside his head, and he could be in for a long afternoon, and Packers fans and the Packers are going to love that.
Yeah, it should be, again, a good day as long as the Packers don't get in their own way.
Yep.
Let's switch it up. The Rams offense against the Packer defense, both kind of middle of the pack right now early in the season. The Rams total offense 18th overall, and that being said, they haven't had Cooper Kupp. They haven't had Puka Nacua for quite a bit this year. Green Bay's defense 20th overall in the NFL. The Rams offense is averaging just under 19 points a game. That's tied for 22nd in the league. 224.3 passing yards per game, even without Kupp and Nacua most of the way. That's still 8th in the NFL. The rushing offense hasn't been very good for the Rams. 88.3 rushing yards per game. That's 28th in the NFL. Green Bay's defense, they're allowing just about 22 points per game. That's 20th in the league. 230.5 passing yards per game. That's 24th. 109.3 rushing yards, which is 11th, which is pretty solid. The Packers' running defense has been a big weak point for a while, for a long time, it seems like. And it seems like they're finally figuring it out on that side of the ball. Gil, what's the matchup that we should be focusing on between a Rams offense that's super beat up and a Packers defense that didn't have its best day on Sunday, but has shown flashes of what they can be?
Yeah, to me, it's going to be important to get pressure on Matthew Stafford. Stafford, he may not have all of his weapons, but he is still a darn good quarterback. Both starting guards, Steve Avila and Jonah Jackson for the Rams, are out. You've got to be able to take advantage. And to me, this is going to be a test game for Jeff Hafley. The Packers did not get any pressure. They rushed 4 players only in the first half, got next to no pressure on the Vikings, and Sam Darnold was able to pick them apart. In the second half, you saw more blitzes. We even saw the slot corner blitz, which worked to perfection. I think Jeff Hafley has to, if the 4-man pass rush doesn't work early, he's got to switch it up a lot sooner. You've got to get pressure on Matthew Stafford because he may not have his receiving weapons. He may not have a great running game in front of him, but he can still do damage if you give him time to throw the football. The Packers pass rush, where's Kenny Clark? Where is Rashawn Gary? You may not have Devontae Wyatt. You've got to be creative, and you've got to get some pressure on Matthew Stafford. If you do that, I think you're in a good shape.
And the Rams offensive line this year has allowed 13 sacks. That's tied for 8th most in the NFL. Obviously, if the Packers don't have Devontae Wyatt, that could be a huge issue. He leads the team with 3 sacks. He's tied for 2nd in the NFL with 6 tackles for loss. He's really, really been a force up front. But you mentioned Jeff Hafley, and Jeff Hafley against Sean McVay. Sean McVay is one of the most creative offensive play callers in football. He's an offensive guru. That's his bread and butter. And Jeff Hafley is a good D coordinator. He seems like he's going to be a good D coordinator. He's shown flashes where he can be really good. His adjustments later in the game against Minnesota, yes, they allowed 31 points, but he was able to adjust well. I do think the Jair injury happening so late in the week practice last week, I think that messed with the game plan. I think Hafley, you would have seen a lot more blitzing and a lot more pressure, but I think him dropping 7 in coverage often against the Vikings early on, I think that was their way to help the back end, help the corners essentially, because Jair wasn't out there. That's a big difference when you're missing a guy at an all-pro level like Jair Alexander, a guy who has a couple interceptions in 3 games this year, who looks like he's back to his old self. I think that played a big factor. But now this week, I feel like you're going against a Rams offense that won't have Kupp, that won't have Puka Nacua, that is limited on the offensive line, and just a lot of injury issues for that Rams offense. Hafley's got to bring the house this week. He's someone who's got to really adjust and just attack the weaknesses. I feel like the Packers, whoever they have a corner, even if they don't have Jair, even if they don't have Carrington Valentine, these corners I feel like can hang with these receivers with the Rams. They could do that. I feel like they could do that. Bring the house. You saw what it did on Sunday when they almost came from behind from a 28-point deficit to beat Minnesota. This is the matchup where it could be a pretty good chess match between both of these teams. Just curious to see how this happens and everything like that on Sunday between Packers D coordinator Jeff Hafley and Rams head coach offensive play caller Sean McVay.
It's going to be a great telling game for Jeff Hafley. Because one of the things we always said about Joe Barry, he doesn't adjust well in game. Mm-hmm. Jeff Hafley, as we saw last week, he did that in the second half.
Yes, he did.
Made the adjustments. Now the question is, can he do it earlier and quicker? let's say he would have made adjustments down 14-0 instead of 28-0. Maybe that would have made a difference in the outcome of that game last week. Not that I'm blaming Jeff Hafley solely for this loss, but I think we're seeing progress. I think he's getting more of a feel for his players and how he has to call a game. Yes, I agree with you. Losing Jair very late in the week definitely put a monkey wrench in the machine there as far as his game plan was concerned. Now he's up against McVay. We're going to learn a lot about Jeff Hafley this week.
And I'll say this, too. It wasn't Jeff Hafley's fault that Isaiah McDuffie dropped an interception early in that game. Could have set the tone immediately in that, and it could have been a completely different ball game. It's just one of those games where the ball was really bouncing in Minnesota's favor quite a bit. That's just the way it is. But, hey, you learn from it. You own it. You fix it. Move on. I think Jeff Hafley's going to be better. This defense is going to be better. And just some numbers real quick for the Packers defense. 82.8 opposing passer rating this year. That's 8th best in the NFL. They're allowing opposing quarterbacks to complete 63.8% of their passes. That's 12th best in football. The Rams offense this year, 3.7 yards per carry. And that's something that they hang their hat on quite a bit. That's tied for 5th worst in the NFL. Green Bay's rushing defense, they're allowing opposing ball carriers to carry the ball for 4.3 yards per carry. That's 13th best in the NFL. And this ranking has only improved as the season has gone along. Clearly a point of emphasis, and the Packers have gotten a little better as the season has gone on. And just some more stats as we move on to our predictions and everything. Turnover ratio this year, the Packers +6 in the NFL. That is 1st in the NFL. Rams are -1. That's tied for 10th worst. Packers have 12 takeaways this year. That's 1st in the league. They're tied for the NFL lead with 8 interceptions and 4 fumble recoveries, already exceeding their 2023 interception total. Thank you, Xavier McKinney. Thank you, New York Giants, for letting Xavier McKinney come to Green Bay. 6 giveaways, though, for the Packers offense. 4 interceptions and 2 fumbles. That's tied for 6th most. Had only 2 giveaways before turning the ball over 4 times officially on Sunday. The Rams, only 3 takeaways this year. That's tied for 6th fewest in the NFL. Really, they are missing their old defensive coordinator, Raheem Morris, who's now the head coach of the Atlanta Falcons. 4 giveaways on offense. That's tied for 10th fewest. They don't generate a lot of turnovers, but they take care of the ball pretty well in L.A. Penalty-wise, the Packers offensively, it has been good. 34 penalties, tied for 4th most in the NFL. Green Bay's defense, 19 penalties, tied for 2nd fewest, even though they had a lot of laundry on defense on Sunday in that loss against Minnesota. The Rams offense, pretty disciplined. 22 penalties on offense this year, 10th fewest in the league. 28 penalties on defense, tied for 13th most. Just the defense has been an absolute mess for the Rams this year. And third down, the money down. Green Bay's offense, 40.7% conversion rate on third downs this year. That's tied for 13th in the league. 30.2% on defense. That's 6th best in the NFL. The Rams offense, 37% on third downs this year, 19th in football. The Rams defense, again, horrible. 50% third down conversion percentage on defense. That is 3rd worst in the NFL. Gil, a lot of numbers I toss your way, but it just feels like if the stats hold true, the Packers shouldn't have a problem, right?
In theory, the 2 things that make me hesitate, Sean McVay, Matthew Stafford. You can't count those guys out. They're creative. And then the third thing that has me concerned is how often the Packers get in their own way. You end up converting a 3rd and 5 or a 3rd and 8, and then there's a penalty and it's a 3rd and 18. How many times can you do that and get away with it? The Packers have to be more disciplined and play a cleaner game. Otherwise, they're going to keep shooting themselves in the foot.
And those tuning in right now, Gil and I are going to get to our predictions pretty quick. If you want to chime in with your predictions, leave us a comment in the comments section. We'll get to those in just a bit. Some Rams injury news. Obviously, Cooper Kupp, he's not going to play. He's already been ruled out. Puka Nacua is still on the IR. You mentioned Jonah Jackson and Steve Avila. They're both on IR. Quarterback Darion Kendrick is currently on IR, as well as cornerback Darius Williams. But Williams is expected to be activated for the game on Sunday. He should be good to go. John Johnson, the safety for the Rams, a veteran safety. He's also on the injured reserve. He's going to be out on Sunday. Just a lot of issues on the injury front. Just a lot of issues in general for the LA Rams. Gil, going into Sunday, why do the Packers win?
The Packers win if they take care of business. On paper, they are the better team. They are the healthier team. If they don't turn the ball over and they don't commit penalties to excess, they're going to win this football game.
For me, if the stats hold true, It's going to be a good thing for the Packers. They should win this game. They're also going to have a great crowd in LA. LA is notorious for having being essentially counted out or essentially outnumbered by opposing fan bases. There's going to be a lot of Packer fans in attendance at SoFi Stadium on Sunday. So if they play to the home crowd, that's going to be a huge factor. And defense gets back to attacking an offense that is injury riddled and beat up. That's why the Packers win. Gil, why did the Packers lose?
Packers lose if Jordan Love is really still inconsistent and not playing up to his capabilities, and B, if they can't run the ball and they're put into a lot of third and longs that they're not able to convert.
Pretty much, I was going to say somewhere along the same lines, Gil. Too much hero ball by Jordan Love is going to get them in trouble. If they're too undisciplined and they get in their own way, more self-inflicted wounds, that's the only way I see the Packers losing this game. I feel like this is a game, too, where I don't want to put the cart before the horse or anything like that, but I just want to say where even if the Packers have a couple turnovers in this game, I feel like they should still win this game. They should. They should. But football is a funny game. Gil, with all that being said, what's your prediction for Sunday in La La Land?
Yeah, I think the Packers get back on track in this game. I think the offense has, enough to get it done. I'm saying 30-21 Packers, and it might be higher, except that running the ball is going to eat up a lot of clock.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same realm as you. I'm within 10 points in total score. I do think the Packers win. I think they win 34-24 over the Rams. I do think Matt Stafford is going to have a pretty good game. He's a good quarterback. He's a Super Bowl champion for a reason. He's been in the NFL as long as he has for a reason. He rises everyone's level up around him. He just does. He's just the kind of gamer that he is. But I just don't think it's going to be enough. I think the Rams are too beat up, and the Packers should get a win. And Matt LaFleur has never lost against Sean McVay. Knock on wood. But Matt LaFleur has had Sean McVay's number, and I don't see that stopping on Sunday. And thank you to Miles tuning in and chiming in on the comments section. His prediction, Packers win 24-10 as the turnover parade continues for the LA Rams, assuming the LA Rams and the Packers taking full advantage. Gil, before we get to some trivia to wrap up this episode of No Huddle Radio here on Packers Talk Network, what articles are coming up on Cheesehead TV, the Packers Post, a lot of these matchups that we were talking about? I bet there's a lot more detail than what we really got to today.
Yeah, I do have a full game preview coming up on the Packers Post. Also did an in-depth look at how the offense for the Packers is going to change without Christian Watson in the lineup, some of the players that have to step it up, some of the adjustments that have to be made. And for Cheesehead TV, going to talk a little bit about the kicking situation and how the Packers should handle it.
Hey, no Watson. That means it's Bo Melton time. It's big play Bo Melton time. I'm excited. So, are you ready for some trivia?
Let's do it.
All right. Well, here's the trivia for this week. Packers haven't won a game at Los Angeles against the Rams, actually, since December of 1966. And the Packers won against the Rams in Hollywood 27-23. This is only a few weeks before the Packers would win their first ever Super Bowl and the first ever Super Bowl in LA. Gil, who was the Packers starting quarterback when they won their last game in Los Angeles against the Rams?
Good Lord. You're going back before my time.
2 weeks before they won their first Super Bowl.
Yeah. You wouldn't ask me this question if the answer was obvious. So I'm going to say it wasn't Bart Starr. So that leaves Don Horn or Zeke Bretkowski. It's 66. It's got to be Zeke because Horn didn't come till 67.
You're an encyclopedia of knowledge, Gil. It is super sub Zeke Bretkowski. He was also, again, known as the super sub. He started for Bart Starr that December day in LA. A Starr was out due to an injury. Bretkowski completed 13 of 23 passes for 245 yards and threw a touchdown and an interception. He was Starr's backup for 7 years in Green Bay. Hey, maybe we got something like Malik Willis behind Jordan Love right now in Green Bay. The Packers, they were 8-1 in games started by Bretkowski when Lombardi was in charge. He's also a Packer Hall of Famer. How about that? As a backup quarterback for most of your time in Green Bay, he was a Packer Hall of Famer. How about that? And Bretkowski and Starr, they were friends until the end. Starr passed away in May of 2019. Bretkowski passed away about 6 months later in November of 2019. So go figure. Zeke followed suit, and him and Bart were close until the end. And man, if the Packers have Malik Willis, if Malik Willis is what Zeke Bradkowski was to Bart Starr, Malik Willis is that to Jordan Love, Packers are going to be in for a good run for the next few years. And hey, Malik Willis, Packers are 2-0 when he starts. So I'm not saying, but I'm just saying.
Yeah, you're just saying. And Zeke Bradkowski also served as an assistant coach and offensive coordinator when part of the time Bart Starr was head coach of the Green Bay Packers in the 70s and 80s. So they stuck together.
Clearly buddies who they stuck together until the very end. The Packers and the Rams on Sunday, kickoff 3:25 Central Time. Packers looking to advance to 3-2. The Rams looking to avoid a 1-4 hole, but hopefully the Packers can peg them down to 1-4. A good football team when healthy. So try to bury the Rams while we can, honestly, right now. Kickoff again, scheduled from Hollywood, scheduled for 3:25 Central, 4:25 Eastern over by Gil, 2:25 Mountain Time, 1:25 Pacific, and however many hours, it's in the morning in Hawaii. So I'm not going to do the math right there. Gil, it's a gotta-have-it game for the Packers. The Rams are down. The Packers, you need to keep up pace in the NFC North, a division that's been very good to open up the season. You got to keep pace. You got to get this win on Sunday.
Yeah, it's a winnable game, and they've blown a few of those winnable games. It's time to cash in and get back on track before you head home for a couple of games.
And I got to say, hey, Matthew Tehan, thank you for chiming in on the comments section. He said he is going to the game in L.A. Be loud, Matt. Be loud with your Packer brethren. You're going to be one of many. Be loud. Let's get the Rams to a silent count on offense in their home stadium. That is the goal as an opposing fan base, especially when you're a Packer opposing fan in an opposing stadium. Just make it happen, Matthew. Rally the troops, baby.
And enjoy the game for sure.
Enjoy the game as well, too.
Yeah, well, that is going to do it for us today. We'll be right back here next week. Follow us on Twitter at @GoPackers and @PackersOn. Stay up to date on all Packers or to ask us questions. Or you can email us at gbpackerssean@gmail.com. Make sure you're subscribed to Packers Talk on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. Big thanks to PackersTalk.com for powering our show. Thank you for listening. Till next time, go Pack Go.
Go Pack Go.